So we don't know.
Okay, so your stance is just I don't know.
All right, let's get the next person. Everyone, please only send a guest request if you do believe that Jesus resurrected from the dead. Yo.
Hold on one
Yo, what's
second.
up? How old are you?
18.
For sure. Do you
Hey, what's
believe
up?
Jesus resurrected from the dead?
Absolutely, yes, sir. Praise to Jesus. Absolutely do believe he resurrected from the dead. I believe if we look at the eyewitness testimonies from the disciples, we can see that the most likely explanation is that he actually rose from the dead. That makes the most sense. It doesn't make sense that he didn't. That makes the most sense and is very clear. And so
Why
I
is
think,
that?
pardon?
Why is that? Why is that the most likely?
Because first of all, like think about it logically. They're not going to die for something that like they're not going to die for something that was false. Like no one would put their
I
life
just
on.
covered that, by the way. I just covered that.
You just covered what? Sorry, I'm
Them
just.
dying for why? I mean, I don't know if you heard it, but I just covered that. Outside of James, Peter, and Paul, we have no evidence whatsoever that the rest of the various disciples died for their faith. We only have good evidence for 3.
So you're saying we only have good evidence for 3? That's your point?
James, Peter, and Paul. Yes,
James
those
Peter.
3 I accept likely were the victims of some kind of martyrdom. But the rest, I don't disagree. And by the way, yeah, I don't believe. And by the way, your first axiom or the first thing that you said, the eyewitness testimony, that's wrong too. The all the gospels are not eyewitness, and that's a well-known statement
Hold on
of
one second, Mike.
historical belief.
Give me a moment. Hold on one second. How are they not eyewitness testimony if they literally were there, present, and saw it happen?
Well, one, they weren't there because none of the Gospels had a name attached to them when they were first being documented. The names, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, came long after these first manuscripts were being written. In fact, our first record of Matthew and Mark come from a man named Papias, who we don't have evidence for. He is actually cited by a 3rd century person named Irenaeus. He cites it that Papias tells us, but even Papias got it wrong because Papias talks about Mark being out of order and that he was a person with Peter, and then he says that Matthew was a sayings gospel, and was written in Hebrew, which is not the case. Matthew is not a sayings gospel, nor is it written in Hebrew, but rather in Greek. So even Papias got it wrong. John and Luke didn't come well later, like well into like the 100s.
Sir, did you actually address the question? I see you're having trouble focusing. I don't think you actually addressed like how
Oh,
they're.
I did exactly. I said that's how they're not eyewitnesses. One, because the manuscripts don't have their name on it at all. The very earliest witnesses that we have that give name are over 200 years later, right? That directly answers your question. And by the way, the very Gospels themselves don't say who they're written by. Nowhere within the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John does it say who they're written by. The closest you will get is the Gospel of John, which at the very end in John 21 says that it was written by the beloved disciple. And who that disciple is, we do not know. All we know is that John records that it was written by the beloved disciple.
You're giving verbose explanation that I don't think
I'm
that's
giving evidence. That's what I'm giving. I'm giving evidence. You
I,
might not like it, but that's what I'm doing.
I contest some of your evidence. I don't believe it's fully accurate.
Oh, please. Go
I
ahead.
genuinely believe that you might be a bit misconstrued. I don't recall exactly what you said, but you said something about I don't remember the exact words, but I do recall that that's already been debunked and disproven. So you'd be actually false on that point. So do you have any sources for the
What
stuff you're?
specifically are you referencing? I don't even think you remember.
He said a lot of stuff. It was a very verbose explanation that didn't really have much point to it. But
No, I gave you 3 biblical scholarship answers to your question. I gave you manuscript evidence, I gave you eyewitness testimony evidence in the form of Irenaeus and Papias, and I then gave you the gospel themselves. I gave you 3 lines of evidence. You
hold on
can
one second.
dispute those, right?
Wait,
But you have to
hold
give
on
me
one
like a
second.
reason why.
Wait, give me a moment. Please give me a moment. I do dispute them as I just stated again. That is just false. I'm sorry, but I don't know what you want me to say to that. It's genuinely ridiculous.
Disprove it. You came in here saying that they were eyewitness testimony. I gave you
They
3 lines of evidence that
absolutely
they're
were.
not.
Let's come down to planet Earth and let's pause. They actually were eyewitness testimonies. You're claiming there are only 3. I recall there were at least 5, if I'm not mistaken. So I really don't know like what your response is to that. What are your response? Scholars have literally stated like that there was 5. I think Bart Ehrman, I think that he mentioned something about there being at least 5 scholars. So
Bar
would
Ehrman,
you like
whose
to-
books I have behind me, by the way, I contain all of his books and I've read all of his books, does not believe they were eyewitness. In fact, I just watched a course from Bar Ehrman about the eyewitness testimony, and he said verbatim, these are not eyewitness testimonies.
Are you sure about that?
Yes,
try
he
again.
is sure, dude. I'm like, out of all fucking people, you pick a Bar.
You want me to go get my
Ehrman.
books? I get my books. I can show
Right,
you the
we
course I
always go to
watched.
Bar Ehrman. That's like,
Yeah, you always go to Bar Ehrman because he's an atheist, right? But Bar Ehrman is where I got my information from, and it's precisely because he's in the consensus view. I can cite you any biblical scholar, Dale Allison, Chris Keith, even Gary Habermas, who's an apologist. You want me to just keep citing scholars who have written full books on the eyewitness testimony? The best case I've heard is from a man named Bachman, who has actually written a good book about eyewitness testimony, but even he doesn't go that far. So I don't know what scholars you're actually talking about.
My dear boy, I think that's say it's not actual evidence. It's hearsay. How do you know they're actual credible scholars that you're
You
referring?
cited Bar Ehrman. You
Yeah.
cited Bar Ehrman. I didn't cite Bar
did.
Ehrman. You cited Bar Ehrman. And I'm saying Bar Ehrman actually is on my side.
That is correct, but at the same time, I think you're twisting his words and the language he used. It's something often used
Okay,
by atheists.
Parker, give me
Like
one
to
second. I'm
twist
going to go get my book. I'm going to go get his textbook written on the New Testament, which I own. I'm going to go get it. So give me 1 second.
That's fine. You can get it, but I don't believe that you're gonna be able to debunk any points.
he is, dude. He is, dude. You picked the
don't
wrong
believe
person to argue on books about, dude. He's literally a librarian, bro.
Nah, I just have to disagree with that. I'd be interested to see.
Well,
It's gonna
you're
be quite
disagreeing with
embarrassing.
reality at this
Hold on one
point.
second. Hold on 1 second. It's gonna be quite embarrassing when you realizes he's not correct. And
All
Would
right.
you like to bet?
Which book would you like to talk about? The New Testament written by Dr. Bar Ehrman, published several years ago, or the Bible written by Dr. Bar Ehrman? Which one would you like?
the Bible, sir.
The Bible.
That is the
Okay.
exact. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go to the book on the Gospels.
Here, I'm gonna put Matt up on the big screen.
Chapter 19 and chapter 20. I don't know why you didn't choose the book on the New Testament, because that would actually be more in depth, but okay. Whatever works.
Say your point. Say your point.
Chapter 19.
Give it a second, everyone. In the meantime, everyone, tap that screen. Let's run it up to 250,000 likes. Share the live as well, everyone. If you want to support me or Matt,
Okay,
send a
here we go.
Venmo Cash App in the bio, everyone.
First paragraph of the book. First paragraph. Okay, I'm going to read it verbatim. Here we go. The Gospel of Matthew was one of my favorite books as readers in the past. In no small measure, this is because it was widely thought to have been written by one of Jesus' own disciples, Matthew the tax collector, called to be Jesus' follower in Matthew 9. Scholars today widely discount this tradition, however. If you read the passage yourself, you can see that one reason why. There is nothing in it to suggest that the writer himself is calling him Matthew.
I mean, that's a fair point. You do raise a valid point. However, I would guess it condemn that scholars disagree. I mean, you can bring up all the secondary sources that you want, but at the end of the day, I also do have sources that I could refer to.
Wait,
that
secondary sources. You brought up the
Relax,
source.
Parker. Relax 1 second, my dear boy. Please don't interrupt me.
My dear boy, you just brought up that source.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. But again, I do believe there are sources that also back up what I'm saying. So we can go back and forth.
Okay,
and,
list them.
I mean, you can look up the sources and see them for yourselves. There are actual credible sources that provide evidence for the resurrection.
Really, can you name one of these scholars?
See, you're not debating in good faith. It's very like you're trying to get a gotcha moment, and
There's these scholars, these scholars that justify my point, but like I can't mention any of these scholars.
By the way,
none of their
Parker, I just want to
names.
say,
and even
I
when I,
just wanna
do
say, by
mention
the
one
way-
of these scholars, they actually agree with you. Like,
Yeah. And by the way, I just want to say, too, I didn't mention any scholars. I mentioned the data, right? Because I don't actually rely on the scholars themselves. I rely on the data that they present, which is why I gave you 3 lines of data. And then you cited Bar Ehrman, which is the favorite way that they do it because
Jake,
because
this
he's
is
an
the
atheist.
$4.20.
And then I just gave you Bar Ehrman's source, and it disproved your very claim. That's the problem, right? You think that because he's an atheist, he's going to then say, actually, they're eyewitnesses. No, and plus, I gave you a scholar that actually does agree with you. I said his name was Richard Bauckham, right? And I've read his book, and he makes a somewhat good case. But if you have read, by the way, a recent article published in a journal, which I can show you, by the way, tears down his statistical argument for how he got to his case. So, again, I think what you come and you say, I don't have any edit, I don't have anything. I think you don't understand that I do days and days worth of scholarship on this. I read it, I talk about it every single day, and I know what I'm talking about when I tell you that the consensus view is that these are not.
Sal, thank you for the
eyewitness
$5. I
testimonies.
appreciate it. Are you trolling, Train? Apparently, I've talked to you before.
I don't recall I've talked to you, and I don't appreciate the gaslighting that you've represented on this live. So I'm gonna take my leave now.
Me?
My dear boy,
How did I gaslight you?
you know how you've acted. It's been quite disrespectful. It hasn't been, very cordial.
Parker has been kind. Are you kidding? It's been kind.
Relax 1 second, please. Don't get emotional. But I do.
Oh,
hope
I
you-
am relaxed. Don't gaslight me now.
Hold on 1 second, my
I
dear
am
boy.
totally relaxed.
Hold on 1 second, my dear boy. Please don't disrespect Christianity on here, saying prove to me that Jesus is resurrected. We all know that.
Are
You can bring
I
up.
can do whatever the fuck I want, and I will
Wait,
disrespect if I
how
want
is it
to.
disrespectful?
I mean, I established it was a fact. You tried to bring up a book to disprove the claim, although I referenced a credible source. But
I
you
didn't bring up the book. You brought up the book. You cited Bar Ehrman. Don't gaslight me into believing what you did, bro.
How
You
is
brought
this
up Bar Ehrman.
disrespectful? We're just saying, prove to me that
Gaslighting,
Jesus
but-
resurrected.
It's just like you do realize there are many people who truly hold that close to themselves, and you kind of mocking that, saying "Prove to me is resurrected." That is people's truth.
I don't care. I don't care. There are billions of Muslims who believe the
Questioning
same thing,
a
and I don't
belief.
care.
Well, how dare you question the atheist perspective when you say that God exists? How dare you come on my live and say that God exists
Hold
when
on
there
one
are
second,
people that
dear
hold
boy.
true, that hold
Hold on one
close to
second,
the
dear
atheist
boy.
worldview?
Give me a moment. Give me a moment.
So-
Again, it. I'm not gonna sit here and do this back and forth. It's very unfortunate that you're acting like this. You can give long, verbose explanations on why you've been acting well when you know
Sal,
damn
thank you
well.
for the $10. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I'm
He was on
going
my
to
live
take my
yesterday.
leave now. Rockin'
My dear-
Librarian.
my
I
dear
do
boy,
hope that you
okay.
learn to find good sources and.
He's trolling.
I have sources. I found them, and
I think
I
he's
disproved
trolling,
you.
Matt.
So you can
He's
run
trolling.
because you're scared. Oh, okay. Well,
Yo, what's up? How old are you?
I proved my point.
I'm 23.
For sure.